Hey everybody, it's Devam with Builder Innovator. We're here with another webcast. This time it's part of a mini series, and it's a mini series of 4 episodes. I'm here with Michael and Steven with Eclipse, and we're going to talk a little bit about finding a competitive advantage in the data and AI era. We're going to be talking a little bit about, what are the industry issues with data and harnessing that data? What is the advantage of actually utilizing that data and managing that data? And then finally, how can that data help you scale your business in the future? So, without further ado, I'm going to let you guys get right into it.
All right, thanks, Devin. Michael Ivie here. I'm the managing partner at Eclipse Consulting, and excited to be with you today to talk about something that's really important to us, which is helping data-intensive businesses evolve. If you trace the lineage of our firm back more than 2 decades, we got our start helping Fortune 500 companies with financial reporting and controls. After the 2008-2009 financial crisis, the criticality of data management for these data-intensive and highly regulated businesses really sprung to the surface. And we were there to answer that call. And we dove deep into data management ever since. And one thing we're particularly passionate about is harmonizing the best practices in data management, where we've developed a lot of those leading capabilities at some of the largest and most prestigious companies in the world. How do we right size those across industries? So whether you're a large financial institution that's offering loans and deposits and securities and derivatives products to customers, or health and life sciences, another highly regulated data intensive industry, managing clinical records, pharma and biotech. It can get very hairy and complicated, but it doesn't stop there. Across all industries, we're seeing increased complexity and demands around data management, whether it's energy, automotive, telecommunications, manufacturing, and yes, of course, something near and dear to our heart, home building. Earlier days of the rapid evolution as we enter into what we're characterizing here in today's talk as the data and AI era. And so we're excited to share some of these leading best practices here.
So if we think about the home building industry and the growth it's seen in the last 2 decades, as Michael mentioned, it's been significant, and each decade's almost brought a new transition about. So we started back in the early, the 2000s, right? We've got web coming on the scene. So what everybody's on the internet now. You go from, your regional builder now has less blockers to become a national builder, right? You open up a whole new market. You make it much, much easier to scale. So with the introduction of web, things changed significantly for the home builder. 2010, early 2010s, we start to see this mobile integration come on the scene, where now you have the ability to interface with your field technicians from a home office, and you've got a PM holding a tablet in the field instead of having to manage everything from paper and books, right? So really changed the game, really drove efficiency and increased efficiency across the board. And as Michael alluded to before, we're definitely in the data and AI era now. AI is not new. It's not some magic wizardry. If you think about it, really, data is the engine that feeds AI. So as Michael alluded to before, data management is hypercritical to your success in implementing AI solutions. So if you want a sort of automations, predictive scheduling, whatever your AI use cases is that you're targeting, you really need to make sure your data is up to snuff and can support that initiative before you can even make any headway in the AI space. With that, and kind of understanding what the paradigm shifts are in home building, we also know that there's perpetual headwinds that everybody in the home building space is facing, right? These are issues that are universal, right? Even if you find some sort of a solution, if you can kind of ease one of them, they'll always be there, right? And to take an example, supply chain coordination. Maybe you find a better way to improve your supply chain through some sort of AI solution or through some sort of automation solution. But supply chain will always be an issue, same as labor and subcontractor dependence will also be a problem, right? Similar to force majeure type events where you have major weather delays or things that are out of your control. It's kind of hard to pour concrete foundations if it's been raining for 2 weeks, right? Those are things that you can't move past, and they're things you have to work around. And we believe there are maybe ways to simplify them, but that's not necessarily where you're going to find your competitive advantage.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. And oftentimes I'm a marathon runner, if you can't tell from the marathon and triathlon medals behind me. But I like to say, run your own race. Calling it competitive advantage really is just being operationally excellent. And these are the things that will help you thrive, create better customer experiences, increase top line and bottom line. In the data and AI era, you probably still have some legacy challenges from some of the prior paradigm shifts that Stephen was alluding to. So how do we continue to play catch up on some tech debt and legacy issues and also try to leap ahead in data management. And so 5 key themes that we really want to highlight, obviously leading with a strong overarching and intentional data strategy and robust but right-sized data governance is critical. And sometimes these can turn into nebulous terms that can very easily end up burning a lot of calories with low ROI if you're not building the right team that actually has robust experience, has kind of already been run that race before and can kind of show you the way. Another key competitive advantage driver that we see is your business and your data architecture. Oftentimes, the business likes to think of this as IT's problem, but increasingly, as businesses become more data intensive, business has to be the owner and the sponsor and has to understand how IT and how data management is enabling them to achieve the mission of the firm. So business and data architecture go hand in hand and are critical. Another critical advantage opportunity is data quality. Having strong data quality management is essential not just for your end-to-end straight through processing of data and driving efficiency there, but also powering the AI engine. And it goes hand in hand with your data controls. Another big one, obviously, is analytics. So, what is the reporting that's helping drive our decision making and our communication, setting expectations to customers, to shareholders, and things like that? And all this, of course, comes in. How do we use AI for reporting and enhancing certain decisions? A big theme that we see that can drive a competitive advantage is process and operational efficiency. Data is essentially the oil that drives processes in our organizations. So having robust master data management and workflow management across key processes is absolutely essential to unlocking some of these advantages. So with that, I think maybe we can paint the picture a little bit more, and I promise we're going to get pretty detailed here with some tangible use cases in a moment. There's a lot that goes into play when you're trying to think about embracing the data and AI era. In this view here, if you kind of look at the bottom gray bar, we're fortunate in the home building space in general, while we do have some of these perpetual headwinds in the short run that can cause some volatility and short-lived challenges, the longer term opportunities that where we can actually shift the curve, our growth trajectory higher, require much more intentional planning and thinking. And what we see, over half of participants in the home building space, 50 to 60%, are really more in this observer or reactive siloed position. And this could be out of fear. It could be avoidance of costs. It could be that they tried and maybe had mixed results or had initiatives fail. There are some that have kind of escaped beyond that. They've made the investment and they've positioned themselves as front runners. They've got the structured and improving data management infrastructure processes. They've started to achieve some of the culture and DNA change around data management. So their salespeople, their business leaders, their operations leaders fundamentally understand the criticality of the data that they play a role in managing, and that they're continuing to invest in developing that acumen. And then, of course, you have your innovators. And depending on the business model that your firm has, you may strategically say, hey, we really need to be a front runner in the space. We need to unlock some data management principles, but cost is our primary concern. So we're comfortable being a fast follower in some of these areas. Maybe that's more aligned with the service model that your organization has. But staying in the observer and reactive bucket, despite some favorable economic expectations, if we look out for the next decade, obviously supply and demand imbalances in the home space leads us to believe that there's going to be continued ample opportunity, but everyone is fiercely competing to get as much of that market share as they can. So we have to look for where we can find differentiators. So we're going to talk about some of that throughout the rest of the session today.
As we get into this, we do want to make it make sense and talk more about the challenges that maybe you're even seeing in your organization. And if we just dive right in here, the biggest pillar we see being an issue to not fitting into the data and AI era is strategic alignment. And strategic alignment, again, is a universal problem. This isn't specific to home building. This is every industry. But we do see this as a major blocker for growth in home building. Simply when you have the business who is focused on the building and selling of homes, and then maybe you have IT, IS, who's kind of supporting their own agenda, right? They know they need to move forward. The business wants to move at light speed, and they can't find the middle ground, right? So you're just missing that strategic alignment. If we go into our next major flaw that we see is customer and trade connectivity. We can sum this up in a really simple use case of lack of a full view of your customer So when home builders go to market, right, you're selling to a customer. A customer could go to multiple communities, look at multiple different products. Well, how do you start to take that data and track it in your system so you can figure out customer preference? And on the flip side of that is once you do land that customer, they're going to purchase a product from you. How do you keep that satisfaction level high so that you can, or keep the satisfaction level high by giving them visibility into the build process, right? So when you think about adding visibility to the build process, it's not just, hey, let's tell them we started today, we'll be done in 90 days. You want to find a way to connect your vendor data where, hey, we actually just finished pouring the foundation, the framing's done, the subfloor's laid, the roof is on, right? How do you get those updates back into your ERP so that you can then show those to the customer and show that full view to the customer and increase customer satisfaction overall? Another issue here that we see is data transparency. And this goes back to kind of what Michael touched on before of business and data architecture. So that we do see a lot of tech debt at home builders. If technological advances and upgrading your data storage systems is not a priority for years and years and years, right, you build up a significant amount of tech debt. So how do you start to upgrade systems, go through those migrations that are painful, but they support and they set you up to kind of take advantage of the benefits that we're seeing from AI in the market today? And then the last piece here is operational efficiency, a very universal problem. But when we see home building, we see a lot of inefficient processes. And this could be from, a local home builder who's grown through M&A, where you bring a bunch of smaller companies together. Now you have a large company in your hands, but everybody kind of does things their own way. You didn't document processes, and then you don't have defined roles and responsibilities to go with it. So as you go through these processes, it's hard to scale that without documentation. And then if something was to break, how do you go find the owner to help you resolve that issue? So operational efficiency is a real critical driver that we see slowing companies down and kind of preventing them from moving to that next level.
Whether it's strategic alignment or operational efficiency, have you worked with builders and seen like this one is definitely the more reoccurring issue?
Yeah, that's a great question, Devam. And I'll be honest, it's a mix of all of them, depending on the organization we're in. But I think that all of them will reign true to some extent. I will say what we do see with home builders, especially when you get a slightly smaller home builder on a scale level, is that business and data architecture is not there to support the systems that you want to create. Specifically, if you want advanced analytics, I mean, maybe you're a data-driven, data decision-making organization, but it's hard to get that level of granularity out of your data simply because your architecture doesn't support it.
Yeah, one thing, some additional context to add there too is what we often see in home building is that the context of the macro environment exacerbates some of these challenges at different times. So 3 years ago, there was more demand than all the home builders could collectively service. And so fast forwarding to today where it's much more competitive and there's a lot more focus on the sales enablement side of things. So different weaknesses around data transparency and operational efficiency, for example, manifest differently in an environment where there's plentiful demand, and it's just about your ability to meet that demand versus another environment where you have the capacity to actually meet demand, but you're having a harder time in a more competitive sales environment.
Yeah, and I think important note there, Michael, is kind of softening the curve, right? How do you move with the ups and downs so it's a little bit more, hey, we're still making progress. We have a strategic roadmap. We know these things are issues. We've prioritized these 5 things moving forward, while also knowing that, hey, if the market's hot, you need to build as quickly as you can, right? So finding that right balance and trying to normalize that curve a bit more, I think would be beneficial. And I think that's kind of what we're trying to uncover here as well. So with that, we'll bring it down a level, right? We'll get more into use cases, a little bit more tangible. Hopefully this resonates with this audience as well. The idea of the slide is to kind of show what might be symptoms of a broken process, right? So we talked about operational efficiency being an issue before. These are symptoms that you might start seeing where if you have limited opportunity for data reuse, it's pointing towards a problem, right? And this is a specific use case that we pulled from previous client work where we started to see these things pop up, and it pointed to this idea of inefficient community setup. Community setup is a very nebulous thing. There are a lot of moving components. It's a lot of data that needs to get set up in the system. And it tends to be a real choke point for organizations and blocks a lot of efficiency, right? So these symptoms like data reuse, inconsistent delayed setup, lack of visibility and changes in impact, or just the inability to do reporting or forecasting off of the process and figure out where you're going to land. These are really common things that if you're starting to see it, maybe you're not entirely sure what the problem is, but it tends to point towards something, right? So these are the red flags that we found as we went through it when we were having interviews with the client, saying, hey, where are your problems? What kind of things are you facing? These are the themes that popped up that pointed towards inefficient community setup.
As you've kind of alluded here, there's a lot of secondary problems. And so if we illustratively select a few of them, we can start to drill into what are some of the root causes that are contributing to those. There's going to be a lot of content on this slide as we go through it. So feel free to pause the video at any point if you want to get deeper. We're not going to cover everything in the interest of time. But to drill in on something specific in the top right, maybe we can focus on a central area of inadequate data governance and quality control. And looking under that, there's a number of potential solutions that can help us address the root cause that ties back to the secondary of downstream problems that we're actually seeing. Because we continue to only try to treat and throw additional resources at the secondary problems, we don't address the root cause. Looking at these, a number of things that we can do. We can implement robust, but again, right-sized data governance framework. It can be very tempting to do an overblown academic exercise here. And so this is where the finesse and expertise of knowing how to right-size it for the organization and the culture of that organization is critical as you're rolling out the concepts of like data ownership and data stewardship. Again, getting back to that point I highlighted earlier, the business really needs to take ownership of the data in the organization, the data that they're producing and consuming. And those data owners really need to understand who is stewarding that data in the organization so that your producers and consumers can operate in harmony with one another. But as you can see, a lot of spaghetti lines on this chart. The data governance and quality controls touches everything. So how do we use data governance to help temper or provide a solution for some of these secondary problems? And we could go through each of these areas and do the same thing. Stephen, maybe you can talk about business requirements.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think hopefully nobody glazes over when we start talking about business requirements gathering. It's not everybody's favorite topic, but when we talk about strategic alignment earlier, right, it's getting buy-in early and often and finding that alignment between business and IT. So many organizations we've seen kind of fall short in this, where you're not committing the right amount of effort up front to gather those requirements, lay everything out, make sure everybody's agreeing, build out that roadmap that you need to be successful, right? This is where we want to be in the 30, 60, 90 days or longer, 1, 2, 3 years, whatever the roadmap looks like. And then figuring out what use cases you're actually solving for, right? Going through those activities, being very intentional up front, building that process, getting those requirements is going to allow you to be more aligned and solve problems in a more succinct fashion. And really what we're saying is solving one of these problems leads to this general ripple effect. And to give more context around the use case we were brought in to solve, it was, hey, we have a broken community setup process. Well, once you start pulling back the layers of this, you start to see, hey, there's actually all these other problems that are embedded within the one thing. So we'll jump into another. This is even more drilled down in the weeds, right? If we haven't lost you yet, maybe we will now. But this hopefully resonates with a lot of you. This is a project that we wrapped up for a home builder, a national home builder in the space. And we were brought in to look at their data. And really what we found is, hey, they want to upgrade their data. They want to move beyond the basics. They want to do the right things and build for the future. But they weren't sure where to start. So when we walked into this, there were 40,000 rows of data where you see pre-Eclipse and description 1 and 2. This is what their data look like. It's unstructured, it's blob data, and maybe to kind of a non-data person, this is fine, right? It's an item that you would need to build a house. No big deal. It's just a faucet. I understand what it is. But when you start to have 40,000 rows of this, 104 material categories, and that is only going to grow as you continue to grow in a company, how do you start to protect this data? How do you start to bring in the benefits of data management, like master data management? So what we did was look through their data set, all 40,000 rows, 104 categories, and start to structure their data in a way that makes sense. And I'll try to refrain from going line by line here, but more explain that the benefits of structuring your data in this way, right? It's data management, but not just for data management's sake. It's building out things where you have manufacturer name and the model number or series name, where you can actually go pull that data. So before that was embedded in description 2, if you wanted to run a report to say in what region is a particular faucet selling best, you couldn't pull that data without using an expensive parser, having a private LLM. By structuring your data out and building more of a robust data set, you could run a basic SQL query and pull back, I want to see, the manufacturer name and model that sold the most across the properties. So starting at this foundational level with your data with an item master and transforming it at the basic level, you can then scale this same process up further throughout your organization, whether you're building out different options, different plans, different homes in general. You can structure your data in the same way. So not only are you getting that analytics, the reporting, you're also potentially, once you finish the cleanup exercise, you've now put a process in place for data requests going forward. So there's the element of stop the bleeding, but how do you fix future issues? So now you have a request process. Instead of asking someone to fill out description 1 and 2, which is going to vary significantly, you're going to ask them, what's the manufacturer name? What's the catalog number? What color is it? And you're able to give pick lists and drop downs and make a more structured data set going forward. So while the initial lift of this is pretty large, once you get your data cleaned up in this fashion, you can start to put those controls in place and protect it going forward.
So with that, I think now we've got down to the ground level. Let's kind of take things back up a little bit and wrap things up since we're coming up on our time here. We can take a look at a number of the business and IT wins. They certainly have to be done in harmony with one another. The business really needs to take the ownership of data management, and IT is there as an enabler. And so when one wins, the other one should be winning at the same time. On the business side in particular, we kind of alluded to many of these wins already, but in particular in today's current environment, sales enablement is certainly a critical one, whether it's better data in your CRM, and of course, everything down to at the bottom, enhanced visibility and metrics. So having a better view across your regions and your territories. At Eclipse, one thing we've been really passionate about for the last few years is harmonizing best practices. So one thing I really encourage you to do, don't just look within your world at how are home builders doing this, because I would challenge you to say that there are many data management best practices are pretty agnostic across industries. The lexicon or the core terms and concepts we talk about that the data management principles apply to vary across industries. So you got to blend the industry specific expertise with the data management expertise. But I would say there are other industries for various reasons that had to really level up their data management best practices that we hope to continue to see home builders take a peek at their playbook, and that can better help. We're seeing already increases in data security and privacy demands in home building. So the demands to drive better AI and decisioning and things like that all come back to having robust data management and just looking to how do we harmonize best practices in the home builder industry, and again learn from what's already been advanced and solved in other industries. Just really encourage you to understand what already exists, what's already capable, what's already been solved.
Michael, totally agree. Data management for the most part is industry agnostic. We do believe that. And it's more about right sizing for your industry. We've said that before during this recording, but right sizing it, finding the right balance for your organization, but the principles remain the same. And then the other piece too is reusability. And I think we talked about data reusability being a big component when we talked about community setup. When you set up a community, you really shouldn't be starting from scratch, right? How do you start to get the mindset where you've built the template, you can pick up 30, 40, 50% of your data and repurpose it for the next community you're setting up? And that's just one example of data reusability. The same could be true for items, right? It's true kind of at any part of the hierarchy in your data architecture. But starting to look for those reusable patterns, starting to find ways to reuse that data and limit storage and everything else. So those are the benefits I think we see from IT perspective that are most important.
I have some rapid fire questions for both of you. And let me take it back here. I say this a lot on a lot of the webcasts and stuff that I'm on, is innovation and the adoption curve is not linear. It is very parabolic and it works exponentially. And I think you guys did a really good job showing how one solution in one area of capturing or harnessing this data has a ripple effect down the line. It's the same thing when we see it in innovation of adopting or implementing a new product that's innovative or something that's changing in the landscape of home building. Let's say someone that is falling in that 50 to 60% of data, they know that they should be utilizing it, they should be capturing it. What is something that they can do as their first step?
What we find is a great starting point is doing a robust assessment. There's industry standard frameworks. At Eclipse, we have a proprietary framework that we've tailored to home builders specifically. Data management practitioners, you may be familiar with the Data Management Association. They have an 11-point framework. The Enterprise Data Management Association is another one with an 8-point framework. And again, we have a framework as well that we've tailored specifically to home builders. It's not necessarily a quote unquote maturity assessment. It's more of a capability assessment. So what data management capabilities that are right sized for your business do you have or not have? And then we can kind of zoom out from that and look at the roadmap, the goals and objectives of the organization. And it's a great way to, in a relatively quick, less than 90-day period of time, typically get a good pulse of where you're at from a data management capability standpoint, where are those gaps that exist, and really inform, okay, what is already on our roadmap and how do we align data management and data strategy in that roadmap?
I was going to have the same answer almost, right? Figuring out where you're at today to figure out where you're going tomorrow, I think is hyper critical. The other part too, though, say you're in the middle bucket, right? And you do have these things that you want to target. You've got your prioritizations going on. There's still a kind of an order of operations, right? So there's a right way of doing things to kind of accelerate. So even if maybe it's not as robust of an assessment that needs to be done because you already know roughly your capabilities in certain areas, maybe spending a little bit more time aligning and making sure that you're on the right path, even though you have maybe the 10 core components laid out, are you doing it in the right order?
And I think, Michael, you answered this a little bit in your question, but just to synthesize it again, is two parts to this question. One is, what does that lift look like? I think there's a lot of apprehension all the time with builders and change or implementing new technology or innovation, is that what is going to be my cost and what is going to be my time? And the second thing is, how do people get in touch with you to work with you on everything that we just talked about? And then what does that process look like? What does that partnership look like moving forward?
It can be a heavy and intimidating lift, and right sizing it, especially if it's your first full rodeo of really doing it. I think most people are pretty savvy and have actually done a lot of this, or at least been on the business side of doing this. You'll have an initial hype cycle in the beginning because you feel like, okay, we're getting concepts on the table. Everybody's excited because there's probably nobody listening to this that doesn't have data headaches on a nearly daily basis or continuous basis. The number of times we see a year pass and millions get spent, a palatable lack of ROI to show for it, comes from really two major things. One, you say too much in the academic area. We weren't execution focused. Our ethos at Eclipse is subject matter led, but execution focused. So we don't just go to school, we apply it. And another thing that can help alleviate that also is in that assessment, do not just look at what gaps exist. Some gaps you shouldn't address. So sometimes deciding what you're not going to do is as important as what you should do. Typically, when we build a roadmap and we do a full assessment and help build illustrative roadmaps and make recommendations, we have a rating framework that we apply where we look at what is the prioritization, what is the complexity and cost of doing it.
Michael, I think you nailed it, right? It's right sizing for what you need. I don't think answering the cost specifics, right? Everything's very different. We want to make sure that the solutions we're building are custom fit to the organization that we're building them for.
And a cautionary tale we always like to share, we have a saying, a fool with the tool is still a fool. So the vendors out there will show you great demos that will be the panacea that solves all of your problems. And rarely, really never does it work that well. So you can have a second-class tool, but you've really implemented it in a thoughtful and strategic way, and it will work better than the Ferrari tool that costs 10 times as much. That was kind of rushed into production. Lead with the business, lead with the strategy, and make technology and tooling decisions based on that.
I just wanted to plug in, how can people get in touch with you guys?
I think the intro slide, we included QR codes. We probably should have said what those are, but those will take you to our LinkedIn profiles. You're welcome to reach out.
Again, been extremely informative. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Steven. And for everybody watching, again, this is an episode, part of a mini series. I like to think about it as laying the foundation for what we're going to talk about next. So all of this will be released at the same time. So if you just watched this one, you're definitely going to want to check out the other ones and see how cleaning, harnessing, and utilizing data will help you in deciding your digital solution platforms moving forward in the other episodes. Thank you guys so much.